I had been working as a veterinarian for over 14 years. In that time, I had seen nearly everything one could imagine: broken legs, festering wounds, rabies cases that made even the bravest men shiver, and the heartbreaking task of helping beloved pets cross over when their time had come. My life had been a mixture of science, medicine, and compassion. Nothing, I believed, could truly surprise me anymore. I thought I had built a wall of reason against anything that smelled of superstition or fantasy. But one evening, as I sat in the quiet comfort of my home, sipping tea and flipping through the newspaper, the phone rang. On the other end was a nurse I knew from a nearby hospital. Her voice trembled, though she tried to hide it behind professionalism. "Dr. Michael," she said, "you need to come quickly. We have a case here. A cat unlike any other." I frowned. "A cat? What's so urgent about a cat?" She paused, then whispered, "This one. This cat predicts death." I laughed bitterly, brushing it off as another nurse's tale born of fatigue and hospital gossip. "I deal in science," I told her, "not ghost stories." But her tone didn't waver. "Please, doctor, you have to see it for yourself. This isn't a joke. Everyone here is shaken. If anyone can explain it, it's you." My curiosity was piqued against my will. A cat that could sense death. Ridiculous. And yet, something in her voice gnawed at me. Reluctantly, I agreed to drive down to the hospital. The air outside was unusually heavy that night, thick with the kind of silence that presses against your chest. The hospital itself looked normal, buzzing with life, but the tension inside told another story. Staff members whispered in corners, glancing nervously at the feline in question. When I first saw her, she looked utterly ordinary. A grand white tabby, with calm eyes, curled neatly in the corner. She didn't hiss, she didn't act strangely. But the way people looked at her with fear, awe, and superstition was unsettling. "This," one nurse whispered, pointing at the cat, "is no ordinary animal. She knows when a patient is about to die." I scoffed, though my stomach twisted with unease. That night, I thought I was here to disprove a myth. I didn't know I was walking into the beginning of something that would shake everything I believed. The cat was introduced to me as Oscar, though the name seemed strangely unfitting. She carried herself with a quiet grace, as if she knew something no one else did. Her fur shimmered under the dim hospital lights, and her golden eyes fixed on me for a moment steady, unblinking. It felt like she was not looking at me, but through me, as though peeling back layers I didn't know I had. I told myself it was nonsense, just a cat, an ordinary animal with ordinary instincts. But the hospital staff didn't treat her as ordinary. They avoided her, whispering in hushed tones when she padded silently down the corridors. Some nurses crossed themselves. Others stepped out of her way as though she carried some plague. The cat, however, didn't acknowledge them. She wandered freely, her paws making no sound on the cold linoleum floor. Then, I witnessed the moment that changed everything. A frail woman was scheduled for discharge that evening. She had been ill, yes, but was recovering well, cheerful even, her family preparing to take her home. The staff moved about with the usual routine, but Oscar slipped silently into the room. Without hesitation, she leapt onto the bed and curled up beside the patient, pressing her small body against the woman's side. A low rhythmic purr filled the room. The nurses froze. Their eyes widened. A heavy silence spread, thick and suffocating. I frowned. "So this is the trick," I said, half mocking. A cat choosing to lie next to someone. But no one answered. They only stared. Minutes later, the woman clutched her chest. A violent gasp escaped her throat. The heart monitor erupted in a shrill alarm. Nurses rushed forward. The family screamed, but it was too late. Within moments, she was gone. The cat leaped lightly from the bed, tail swishing, and walked out without a sound. Her purring had stopped. I stood frozen, my rational mind screaming for an explanation. A coincidence, I told myself. It had to be. But the way the nurses looked at Oscar told another story. They weren't surprised. They weren't confused. They were expecting it. "She always knows," one whispered behind me. "She always chooses the ones who won't see morning." I tried to steady my voice. "Animals sense things, sounds, changes in heartbeat. That's all this is." But deep inside, something cold began to take root. Because when the cat looked back at me once more, her eyes gleamed with something far older than instinct. Something I could not name. That night, sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cat Oscar curled beside the patient, as if guarding her final breath. The steady purring echoed in my mind, growing louder, deeper, until it no longer sounded like a cat at all, but something otherworldly. I kept telling myself it was coincidence. I was a man of science, after all. My entire career was built on facts, not folklore. Yet the image of the woman gasping for air, followed by Oscar's casual departure, gnawed at me like a worm burrowing into my thoughts. The next morning, I returned to the hospital, determined to disprove this madness. I needed to see Oscar again, needed to catch her in the act of being just a cat. But when I entered the ward, a strange silence greeted me. Patients whispered. Nurses avoided eye contact. The air carried the weight of fear. I found her in room 207. A middle-aged man lay there, frail but stable. He smiled faintly when I entered, his wife holding his hand. There was nothing alarming in his charts, nothing to suggest imminent danger. Yet there was Oscar, perched on the edge of his bed, her tail wrapped neatly around her paws, her golden eyes fixed on his face. The wife looked at me desperately. Doctor, please, do something. Why is the cat here? Is my husband going to... Her voice broke, and she couldn't finish the sentence. I forced a smile. It's nothing to worry about. Cats are unpredictable creatures. She probably just finds the bed warm. But inside, my stomach twisted. I wanted to order the nurses to remove her, but none dared to touch the animal. She sat there as though she belonged, her body still, her eyes unblinking. Hours later, the inevitable came. The man, who only hours ago had been talking, suddenly collapsed into violent convulsions. His wife screamed as the monitor spiked, alarms shrieking into the sterile air. Doctors rushed in, tried everything, but within minutes, he was gone. And through it all, Oscar remained motionless. Her purring filled the room like a funeral hymn. Only when his chest stilled did she leap down, brushing silently past me. My throat went dry. This was no coincidence. Twice was a pattern. But patterns, I knew, could mean rules. And rules meant something far darker was at play. I could no longer dismiss what I had seen. Twice now, death had followed Oscar like a shadow. But science demanded proof, not superstition. If this cat truly possessed some uncanny ability, there had to be an explanation, something rational, buried beneath the fear, so I began to watch her more closely. Over the next several nights, I visited the hospital after hours. The corridors were quieter then, the fluorescent lights flickering, the smell of disinfectant mingling with the faint, metallic temps of blood. Patients slept, machines hummed, and in the midst of it all, Oscar roamed like a silent sentinel. I carried equipment, thermometers, stethoscopes, even a portable device to measure minute changes in body temperature and heart rate. If Oscar was detecting something, I would find it. I observed her approach, one patient, an elderly man, whose breathing rattled in his chest. She leaped gently onto his bed and settled against him. I slipped forward, checking vitals. His pulse was weak, yes, but steady. His temperature, normal. By every metric, he should have survived the night. Still, Oscar purred. Low, rhythmic, ceaseless. I stayed by that man's bedside for hours, notebook in hand, scribbling observations, waiting for the flaw in her pattern to reveal itself. Midnight passed, then 1 in the morning. My eyes grew heavy, but I refused to leave. Science required patience. At 2:07 a.m., the man stirred violently. His breath caught in his throat, his chest convulsed, and before I could summon the nurses, his body went rigid. Within minutes, he was gone. The machine screamed. The nurses rushed in. And through it all, Oscar did not flinch. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, catching mine for a brief second. It felt less like an animal's gaze, and more like recognition, satisfaction. I wrote frantically in my notes. No significant change in vitals before death. Cat predicted outcome regardless. But the question gnawed at me. How? I ran tests on Oscar herself. Blood samples, reflex checks, even scans. Nothing unusual. She was healthy. Ordinary. Yet ordinary animals did not announce death with such precision. Each failed experiment drove me deeper into a quiet dread. Because for the first time in my life, I faced something I could not explain. And I began to wonder if Oscar wasn't simply sensing death. Was she somehow inviting it? My research consumed me. I spent every free moment at the hospital, scribbling notes, charting Oscar's movements, trying to find the invisible thread that tied her to death. Yet the more I searched for logic, the further it slipped from my grasp. She chose with terrifying accuracy. No matter the condition, no matter the charts, when Oscar settled beside a patient, the outcome was certain. Some deaths came swiftly within hours. Others dragged into the early dawn. But never once was she wrong. The staff no longer questioned her. They accepted her presence with a strange reverence, even gratitude. Families, too, began to understand. When Oscar curled up against their loved one, they knew time was short. They wept, they prayed, they whispered last words, clutching hands before the final silence. The cat became less a harbinger of doom, and more a bridge between the living and the dead. But for me, there was no comfort, only unease. One night, while reviewing my notes in the dim light of my office, I heard something unusual as sound, low and steady, purring. My head snapped up. There, in the corner of the room, sat Oscar, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the half-dark. She had never come to me before. The sound grew louder, reverberating in my chest. My pulse quickened. I wasn't sick. I wasn't dying. Why was she here? I stood abruptly, my chair screeching against the floor. "Get out," I whispered, my voice unsteady. But she didn't move. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for the briefest moment, I swore I heard something beneath the purring. A whisper, faint, almost indistinguishable. Words, not sounds. I froze, straining to hear. My heart hammered in my ears, drowning it out. By the time I gathered courage to step closer, the whisper had stopped. Oscar blinked once, slowly, then padded silently out of the office, leaving me trembling. I told myself I imagined it. Stress, fatigue, obsession, it could explain hallucinations. Yet that night, I dreamt of her. She sat on my chest as I slept, her eyes burning into mine, her purring rumbling like a chant. And in that dream, I understood the words. Everyone dies, but some might choose. I woke drenched in sweat, my breath ragged, the sound still echoing in my ears. And for the first time, I wondered if Oscar's gift wasn't a gift at all, but a bargain. After that night, I could no longer look at Oscar the same way. She wasn't just an animal anymore. She was something else. Something that watched, waited, and chose. I tried to avoid her, but the hospital was her kingdom. No matter where I went, hallways, wards, even the cafeteria, at some point, my eyes would find her. Always still, always silent, always watching. And yet, the strangest thing began to happen. Patients started asking for her. Families requested that Oscar be allowed near their loved ones in their final hours. They believed she brought peace, a soft passage from this world into whatever lay beyond. The hospital administration, recognizing the odd comfort she provided, did nothing to stop it. But I saw it differently. I began to notice patterns no one else did. After Oscar visited a patient, the room itself seemed colder, heavier, as if the walls absorbed the grief. Monitors flickered strangely, lights dimmed without explanation. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I swore I heard faint footsteps behind me in empty corridors, yet when I turned, there was nothing but shadows. One evening, a young man in his 30s was admitted, healthy by most standards, recovering from minor surgery. His prognosis was excellent. But then, Oscar entered. She leaped onto his bed and nestled against him. His family laughed nervously. Brushing it off, my blood turned to ice. I begged the staff to keep watch, to double-check everything, to not assume the worst. For hours, nothing happened. I began to think maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. But then, shortly past midnight, he convulsed violently. His heart monitor screamed. Doctors scrambled, but their efforts failed. He died within minutes. When it was over, I noticed something chilling. A faint scratch along his wrist, thin, precise, almost like a signature. No one else seemed to see it. But I did. And then I remembered my dream. Some I choose. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't instinct. Oscar wasn't just predicting death. She was claiming it. And as her golden eyes met mine across the sterile room, I felt the truth settle in my bones. One day soon, she would choose me. I avoided the hospital for several days, telling myself I needed rest. But the truth was simpler. I was afraid. Afraid of her. Afraid of what those golden eyes hid. Yet curiosity and duty pulled me back. I told myself I'd go just to check on patients, to ground myself in medicine, in reality. But the moment I stepped into the ward, reality faltered. Oscar sat in the hallway. Her tail curled neatly, her gaze fixed not on me but on the ceiling. I followed her eyes, but saw nothing. Just fluorescent lights humming weakly. Still, her stare unnerved me. That night, I walked the halls alone. The air was thick, oppressive, as though the building itself was holding its breath. The faint sound of purring followed me, though Oscar was nowhere in sight. Then I saw her. She was perched at the end of the corridor, half hidden in shadow, but when I blinked, something was wrong. Her silhouette was larger, wrongly shaped. Her ears seemed longer, sharper, and her shadow stretched across the wall like a figure standing tall, too tall to be a cat. I froze, my pulse hammering. Slowly, I stepped closer, whispering, "You're just an animal. Just an animal." Her eyes glowed brighter than before, twin lanterns in the dark. And then I saw it just for a moment, something behind them. A shape, writhing, shifting, like a face pressed against glass, from the other side. A mouth opening, whispering without sound. I stumbled back, nearly tripping. My rational mind screamed for explanation, trick of the light, sleep deprivation, stress, but my heart knew better. The purring deepened, reverberating through the floor, through my chest. My vision blurred, and I swore I saw hand-slung skeletal hands sliding across the floor, toward me. Their movements synchronized with the cat's rumbling him. I blinked, and they were gone. Oscar rose, padded past me without a sound, brushing my ankle. Her touch was cold, and in that moment, I realized something dreadful. She wasn't just predicting death. She wasn't just choosing Dot. She was the doorway, a vessel for something that wanted in, and it was watching me now. I tried to warn the others, the nurses, the doctors, the families. They all thought Oscar was a blessing, a gentle angel guiding the dying toward peace. But I had seen what lurked behind those golden eyes. I had felt its cold breath. No one listened. The more I insisted, the more they dismissed me. "Dr. Michael," they said, "you're exhausted. Take time off." Exhausted, perhaps, but insanity could not explain what I saw next. I returned home one evening, desperate to escape her shadow. My apartment was dark, quiet. I poured myself a drink, trying to steady my nerves. But the silence pressed in, heavy, suffocating. Then I heard its soft, steady, unmistakable Dot, purring Dot. The glass slipped from my hand, shattering across the floor. I spun toward the sound, my heart pounding. And there she was, Dot. Oscar sat in the corner of my living room, her fur blending with the shadows. She shouldn't have been there, had locked every door, every window. Yet she stared at me calmly, as though she had always belonged in that space. My throat tightened. "Why?" I whispered. "Why me?" Her head tilted slightly, and the purring deepened. For a moment, I swore I saw her shadow stretch across the wall, taller, broader, something human-shaped, crouching where no human stood. My vision blurred, the room spun, and a voice, low and guttural, crawled into my ears. "Everyone dies. Some I choose, some I follow." The words weren't spoken aloud. They bled into my mind, scraping at the inside of my skull. I clutched my head, screaming, "Get out!" And then she was gone. No sound, no movement, just emptiness where she had been. I collapsed onto the couch, gasping, my body trembling. Had I imagined it? Was my mind cracking under pressure? Yet when I glanced at the floor, my blood ran cold. There, etched faintly into the wood where Oscar had sat, were claw marks. 4 deep, deliberate lines, too sharp, too perfect to be accidental. She had come to my home. She wasn't waiting in the hospital anymore. Now, she was waiting for me. Sleep no longer offered escape. When I closed my eyes, she was there. Oscar, perched on my chest, her eyes glowing like dying embers. The purring thundered through my bones until my ribs rattled, until my heart skipped. And behind her form, I saw the shadows, figures with hollow faces, reaching hands, whispering, in voices that scraped like rusted blades, "Join us, join us." I woke, drenched in sweat, gasping for air. But the purr always lingered for seconds after consciousness returned us, though she was still in the room, watching. The hospital became unbearable. Patients died as they always had, with Oscar faithfully at their side, but now I noticed something new. Each time she chose someone, she glanced at me first, briefly, deliberately, as if reminding me, "Your turn is coming." I grew paranoid. I locked my doors, checked every corner, left lights burning through the night. But she found ways to slip in. I'd catch fleeting glimpses, her tail vanishing around a corner, her eyes staring from the dark gap beneath my bed, her shadow stretching impossibly long across my wall. Once, while washing my face in the bathroom, I lifted my head and froze. In the mirror, she sat on the counter behind me, though when I spun around, the room was empty. Only for fresh claw marks scarred the tile. Sleep deprivation consumed me. My notes became frantic scribbles, my medical charts littered with drawings of eyes, of claws, of words scrawled in a hand I barely recognized. "She waits," She chooses. She knows. I began to avoid patients altogether. Every death felt like a rehearsal. Every purr a warning. The staff whispered now, not about Oscar, but about me. They said I was unraveling. They were right. One evening, I found myself standing in the morgue. I don't remember walking there. Rows of covered bodies stretched into the cold silence. And there she was, curled neatly atop one of the sheets. When she saw me, she rose slowly, deliberately. Her eyes glowed in the sterile light, and I swore I saw lips moving where no lips should be. Almost time. Michael. I stumbled back, my breath fogging in the freezing air. My hands shook, but I couldn't look away, because deep inside, I knew she wasn't just announcing death anymore. She was counting down. The nights bled together. I no longer trusted the clock, no longer trusted sleep. Each tick felt like a nail hammered into my coffin. Each blink an invitation for her to come closer. Oscar was everywhere, now slipping between shadows, reflected in windows. Crouched at the end of hallways where no cat should be. And always, always watching me. The hospital staff avoided me. I heard their whispers. He's gone mad. He's cursed. The cat has marked him. Perhaps they were right. I was no longer the man I had been. The science I once clung to had rotted away, leaving only fear and inevitability. One night, I returned to my office and found her waiting on my desk. No attempt to hide, no silent stalking, just sitting there, tail curled, eyes glowing gold. I froze. My mouth was dry. "Why me?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. Her purring began, deep and resonant, rattling the pens on my desk. The air grew heavy, the lights flickered, and then, impossibly, she spoke. Not with her mouth, but with the voice that had been echoing in my dreams. The voice that seemed older than death itself. "Because you saw me." The room tilted. Shadows spread along the walls, stretching like fingers, pulling at the corners of reality. Behind Oscar, faces pressed against the darkness hollow, screaming, endless. The dead, all the ones she had chosen. Their whispers filled the air like a storm. I backed against the wall, shaking my head. No, no, I'm not ready. Her eyes burned brighter, and the whispers rose to a deafening roar. No one is. The last thing I remember was her leaping from the desk, impossibly fast, impossibly large. Her shadow engulfed me, claws like ice against my chest. My scream never left my throat.